Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, May 21st. A couple announcements here before we get started on today's lesson. As you can see, it's our Greek myths lesson today. Number one, grades for me and for all your teachers are due May 28th. Okay, so you need to have all of your work in by that date. In fact, it's May 28th. I believe it's at midnight at May 28th. I'll have to double check that and I'll let you know. But I would try to get all of your work done sooner than that, just in case you have some issues uploading or something doesn't work for you. You still have time to get in contact with me. If you wait till the last minute and let's say Amplify decides not to load up for you that day, you're out of luck. So try to get everything done by the 27th would be safe. And in case anything happens, you can email me or text me on Remind, and then we can figure it out in that day. If you wait till the very, very last minute, you might not get that luxury. Number two is that this assignment that we're going over today, and I'll show you over here what it looks like. Okay, this sheet I shared with you. There's a couple things you need to do in order to make a copy for yourself. So let me show you how to do that for today. Actually, before I do that, let's double check one last thing too. Is all of your, this is really your last assignment. So all of your other work, if you have not turned it in, you still can turn it in, guys. Don't forget, all right? Don't ask me like, hey, what can I do for extra credit? And then I look at your grades and you have 6 missing assignments. I'm going to say do the missing assignments, okay? This week, you can do extra credit for your reading log. I will throw that into any missing reading logs. There's no DLP this week. We're trying to keep it really simple as we get towards the end of our school year, okay? But still, grades are going to be official and all of that. That's not changed. You're getting an A, a B, or a C. And if you are below that threshold, you're getting an incomplete. Okay, so an incomplete basically means you had an F or you did not participate in distance learning, and that will not be able to be changed. Okay, so you don't want to be stuck with an incomplete. In my opinion, it's actually worse than an F. An F could be something like, oh, you just didn't understand the material, you didn't get to class because you were sick, or you had missing assignments, you failed tests. But an incomplete means you clearly didn't try to do the distance learning as it was assigned. So make sure that that is not on your final grade. All right, let's get started on today's lesson. So this is the sheet that you need to keep by your side at all times. It needs to be completely filled out. That's how you're getting your 50 points. All right. We've done a few stories already. We've done People Could Fly and Fox and the Crow. So what you're doing is you're telling me what type of tale it is. So for instance, this is a fable, Fox and the Crow. I'm not going to give all the answers away, but that's what you would put there. You're going to have to do a little bit of research to find the factual, real life stuff that was actually true, and then find out the stuff that's a little made up. Okay. You need to also tell me what the moral is, what the message, what is it trying to teach you? When did it take place? Where did it take place? And what kind of customs did we get to learn about the culture that the myth is from? And finally, the beliefs, like what do they value in a person? All right. So that's what you need to do here. Okay. So this is the same stuff. You can do it on either one. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then below, you'll see all of the notes that we've gone over. Okay. All of these notes are literally in that lesson that I provided last week. Or was it Monday? Or a few days ago, wherever it was. And then today, I'm giving you the rest. Today, I'm giving you literally everything from the myth. Okay. All this stuff here are our notes. So if you copy down the notes as I tell you to, you'll have everything you need and you'll get 100% on this guaranteed. Now, some people are having issues on how to make a copy of this. Okay. It's very easy. When you click on that link, you'll be getting something like this. It loads up. Okay. And you won't be able to write in it because it is only for those who can view. So you won't be able to do anything on it if you just leave it like this. You do have to do this next step, which is file and then make a copy. Okay. Once you make a copy, It's going to allow you to rename the document. In that case, then put your name and then oral traditions worksheet on there, and then you'll be able to edit it freely, which is going to help you complete it, obviously. Okay, so that is a very, very important step. I had a lot of people messaging me saying they can't edit the document. It's because you have to do that one step there. Otherwise, it would change my original document, and that's no good. I need my document. Okay, so with that out of the way, again, what we're doing today are the Greek myths part. So this is stuff we've already done. You should be able to fill out. This is what we're doing today. You'll notice that they're exactly the same as the notes that we're going to go over today. So you copying them down, pausing the video, getting them all done would be your best and easiest way to get this complete full credit. All right, so let's get started without further ado. All right, Greek myths. So we've gone over folk tales in terms of fables, in terms of legends. There's another style of folk tale, and that's the mythology, ancient Greek myths. Okay, so one thing to remember about Greek and Roman, a lot of students, if you don't know your history, it may be a little bit confusing. So the Greeks actually come before the Roman Empire, and they're very, very powerful during the time. You've heard of some of the city states. They lived in these things called city states, which are like countries in a sense. There was Athens and there was Sparta. So there was a bunch of different ones. Those are the two famous ones you've probably heard of. And the Greeks were very, very advanced for the time period. We're talking, about 1000 BC. And in terms of their government, their technologies, their military expertise, they were very, very advanced and really the peak of civilization in the world at this time. I would definitely say that they were very, very advanced. They did believe in what we call polytheism. Poly meaning multiple and theism meaning religion. So this means that they believed in many different gods. And they believed that the gods were responsible for different parts of the world. So, instance, the sea and the oceans were one god. There was a main god. There was all sorts of gods for all sorts of different things, and that's how they believed the world worked. What happened after the Greek Empire started to end is that the Roman Empire sort of took its place. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically the Romans take all the great things that the Greeks had accomplished and either copy them or even make them a little bit better, including the religion. So they take the same gods that the Greeks had, in essence, and they basically rename them so that they're Roman names. And that's why you might see two names of the same god, technically. And that means that one was the Greek version and one was the Roman version, even though really, in essence, they're the same god, polytheistic, ruling the world. So the Romans then would kind of take over for the Greeks, and the Romans would last, another good 1,000 years or so until around 400 AD. And what's interesting about the Romans is that they almost like know the gods aren't completely real, but they still believe in them, if that makes sense. Religion wasn't a huge part of their life, especially as the Roman Empire grew to be very, very big and large. But they actually coincide with Christianity. But I'm getting a little off topic here. But so just so you know that the Greeks come first, the Romans come second. They use the same gods. It's just that the Greeks rename you name them one thing and the Romans rename them for another, but it's the same god. So that's just a little bit of a clarification as we talk about the Greek myths. The Greek myths are really the fun ones, the one that everybody likes to read and go back. So what is a myth? Okay, myths were, again, these are all stuff you need to copy down into your notes. So if you want to pause now, copy these down, and then you can listen to me as you have when you're already done. So myths are created because there's a lot of questions and very little answers out in the world. Science, as we know it, existed for sure. People wanted to know the facts, but there was the lack of technology really limited the answers that people could come up with. So, for instance, you look into space, and remember the lighting that we have, that we call it light pollution, like it drowns out the sky. So when we look up, we see some stars, but really back in this time, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, the stars would have been all over the sky. It would have been really, really different. If you've ever been camping or really out in the wilderness, you probably have noticed that there's a lot more stars that you can see out there. And the same is true way back in the Greek time. You would see so many things. You would even see like galaxies, and you could see uh, all the planets a lot clearer, all sorts of stuff. And so you didn't have telescopes or satellites to go and explore these uh, space objects, and so you just kind of made up stories about them, that there were the gods, that if you saw a picture that the stars outlined, you would make up a myth for it. So this goes for all sorts of things that they didn't have answers for. People, human beings in general, want to know the answers to questions, and so if you can't come up with an answer, then you kind of make one up, if you will, with a myth. And so that's the big purpose of these to start. So we're going to explain a natural phenomenon that today may seem very obvious to us, like an earthquake. An earthquake today, we know for 100% that it's the plates of the earth moving against each other. But back in ancient Greece, it would be impossible to know that the earth was on these 7 different plates and was moving around. Who would think that the land we're standing on is actually moving? It has been moving for millions and millions of years. Like, that just is very hard to understand without technology and science that we have today. So what you would do is you would create a myth, an explanation as to why the earth is shaking. And yes, they have earthquakes in Greece, big ones sometimes too. So why is this happening? Well, let's make it up and create a myth that at least gives us an answer, even if it's not the correct answer. At least it gives us an answer. What's interesting in the myths is that the gods are very much interacting with humans a lot of the time. Um, they aren't they are in their own little world, I suppose, but they can definitely go back and forth and interact with human beings, and they take advantage of human beings. Some of them want to help humans, some of them do not want to help humans, some want to mess with humans, some they really like to uh, kind of build relationships with humans, if you know what I'm talking about, uh, loving ones. And so the gods basically can do whatever they want. Um, and there are myths in all sorts of cultures. There's, like I said, there's Roman myths as well, like the how Rome was actually founded, how it was created, is a myth in of itself that involves 2 guys being raised by wolves. Actually, we'll get in, if we have time, we'll get into that story. Um, but the most popular by far is Greek mythology. People still just read this for fun because there's so many stories, there's so many gods. It's almost like a soap opera when it comes to how the world was back in ancient Greece. So they're still very, very popular today, and they give us a huge insight on what Greeks found to be desirable, what they did not like, what you should act. And they're a lot of fun too, because there's a lot of fantastic things that happen that aren't realistic, but are fun to imagine. Okay, so our next slide here, go ahead and pause and copy those down. And what are the big keys to a myth? Well, there's basically 4 that are going to happen in almost every single Greek myth that you read. Okay, you're going to have gods or goddesses. Goddesses are just the female version of gods. You're going to have those in an ancient Greek story at some point. Even if they're not the main character, they will be there in some capacity. The storyline is going to involve conflict, meaning the main character is going to have to overcome a problem, and probably multiple problems. And we go back to that number 3. Oftentimes, there'll be 3 major conflicts for the hero or the main character to overcome. While all of those are happening, we have gods and conflicts. There is a moral or a lesson that's trying to be taught to you about why something happens in the world. So it might not seem obvious, and in many cases, you don't even know what it's trying to explain until the very end. So when we read our Greek stories, you're going to see, it's going to be like the last paragraph or the last sentence is, oh, and this is how the seasons came to be. This is how we have fall, summer, winter, and spring. And you're like, oh, that whole story I just read, like 3 pages worth, that's what it was about. It's not like it's going to tell you, oh, and this is how summer was created. It's going to be, oh, at the end, and this is why this exists. So it tries to explain something to you. And again, computers and books and stuff don't really exist in this time. You might have one, an original version and stuff like that, but you won't have multiple books to pass to every family. So these are really an oral tradition as well. They're being passed down from generation to generation. But it's easy to do because these are questions that everybody's going to have if we don't have if you don't have answers to these questions. Why is it hot for half the year and why is it cold for half the year? That doesn't really make sense. And we know today that it's because it's the distance the earth is from the sun and the tilt of the axis of the earth. But I mean, that is impossible to know without some sort of technology. And the Greeks obviously don't have that quite yet. So let's make up a myth about why there is a winter season and a spring season. All right, here's our last slide. Go ahead, pause, and copy that down now. And let's go over it. So the characteristics that the gods possess. What's interesting is that if you didn't know better, you would think that they're just human beings. They are going to act like human beings. They're going to have the same desires as human beings. They're going to even make mistakes like human beings do. It's just that they happen to be immortal, or meaning they can't die. They will live forever. That's the big thing. That's the big draw of being a god, is that you will live forever. But you still act like a human most of the time. They have weaknesses, they have strengths, they are very human-like, and that's why they want to interact with humans as well. And it makes sense when they do interact with humans. It's not like the person is surprised or like paralyzed because they're seeing a god. It's a normal human interaction. Obviously, that means that these gods and goddesses are never growing old, that they're staying the same age, they'll have the same look for eternity. They also are responsible for certain things of the earth, which gives them supernatural abilities. So there's a god for everything you can think of, really. God of wine, a god of earth, a god of weather, a god of the sun, a god of the ocean, a god of everything. And some of them will have multiple jobs as well, but they are there's a god for everything. You can look them up. There's hundreds of gods. Some are obviously a lot more famous, like Zeus and Poseidon. But there is gods that I'll look up and I didn't know there was a god for that, and there was. And what they're able to do as well, which is very important, is they can travel instantly a very, very long distance. So why I put this into the slide is that they can be in one area and then the very next instant they can be in another, and that can really give them an extra ability that can explain a lot of things that the stories are trying to explain. So what I'm saying is, like, they can be in one area, then they can go to an entirely different area instantly. There's no like time period of waiting, and so they can do a bunch of different stuff at once. And that's why you don't need 5 6 different gods to explain something. You can have a story about one god and seemingly doing impossible things, but it's okay because they have this ability. Again, this isn't rooted in science. We're not looking for realistic, plausible, scientific answers. We're looking just for answers at this point, and with a little bit of entertainment value as well. Okay, so we do have a Greek story to read. I'll share with that after we finish our sheet. But really, your big thing is to finish all of this. Okay, so tomorrow I'll give you the lion and the statue, and all stories are Anas's. And that should give you all of the stories you need to read. As you notice, they're not too long. The Fox and the Crow was a few paragraphs. People could fly a few pages. I think the Lion and the Statue is pretty short as well. And then we're going to get to our Greek story too. So our Greek myth, if we have time. I want to get this done first before I move on. Okay, so there you go. We should have this done hopefully by the end of the week. I'll probably give you a few extra days next week to get it done. And that's it. That's our final big assignment. Of course, if you're missing iReady, if you're missing No Red Ink, I'm going to be updating grades this weekend probably. I'll probably do them on Monday or so you can see where you're at. And if you have any issues or questions, email me or hit me up on Remind. All right, guys, Mr. Sanchez out.